So the Oscars were last night, and Miss Angela Bassett is being called out for her reaction to not winning the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. She is being called shady. Yeah. You see, she didn't stand up and clap for the actual winner, who was Jamie Lee Curtis, who won for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Damn. Hashtag Angela Bassett. It's okay. It's called losing gracefully, sitting with a scowl, all pissed off. Another person tweeted, Angela Bassett is one of my favorite actors. However, I did not like her reaction to not winning. It made her look unprofessional and sour. I was disappointed by her not winning, but more disappointed by her reaction. Yeah, you see, I have a problem with those tweets. One, if you remove the lens of misogynoir, you'd see that Miss Bassett was not scowling. She was actually trying not to cry. She was trying to control her emotions. Two, Miss Angela Bassett is allowed to feel however she wants to feel, and she's allowed to express it in any way she likes. Three, Carrie Condon, who was nominated for Best Actress in The Banshees of Inisherin, she showed her displeasure at losing to Jamie Lee Curtis as well. Yet no one is talking about her, are we? But four, we all know why, don't we? A white actress can get away with showing her displeasure, yet a black actress cannot. And that's because black women are not allowed to have complex emotions. We're supposed to shut up, smile, and take it. We're not supposed to show things like disappointment, sadness, or frustration. We're supposed to be stoic. We're supposed to take these things in stride and act unbothered. We're not supposed to be upset at losing over and over and over again. Even our efforts to control our emotions are misinterpreted as an attitude, as angry, as scowling. Miss Angela Bassett is being dragged on the internet for expressing a basic human emotion: disappointment, loss, frustration. And here's another truth. Angela Bassett lost out to Jamie Lee Curtis, whose performance in Everything, Everywhere, All at Once does not even come close to what Miss Angela did in Black Panther. It doesn't even hold a candle to what Miss Angela did. Once again, a black woman turns in a stellar performance only to lose again to a white woman who just did okay. And don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I enjoyed the movie. I watched it twice, back to back. And I like Jamie Lee Curtis. I liked her in the movie. But let's be honest. We all know that Michelle Yeoh and Stephanie, is it Sue? We all know that those two individuals carried that movie. And even Stephanie Sue lost out to Jamie Lee Curtis. Why and how? When Stephanie acted rings around Jamie Lee Curtis.
Let's talk about women in hip hop based off the songs I listen to get me through the day. Like, if you see me walking down the street and take off my headphones, number one, why would you do that? That's pretty wild. But number two, This is what I'll be listening to. We'll start right here at Tomorrow 2 by Glorilla featuring Cardi B. This song don't hit like gospel to some of y'all. Y'all don't feel encouraged, inspired, hopeful after listening to this song? I ain't worried about no credit score. I might be rich as fuck tomorrow. Every day the sun don't shine, but that's why I love tomorrows. Doesn't it open you up to life's possibilities? That's what it does for me. Maya Angelou taught me to be open to the possibilities of life, and so did Glorilla. Was that a reach? Absolutely not. Moving on to number 2. Conceited by Flo Milli. Flo Milli can really rap, and she taps into a powerful and captivating self-affirming space in this song. In a society that habitually tears down black women, that's invested in critiquing black features but only when they're in black skin, a fact especially true for dark-skinned women, it's inspiring to see her tap into this place of self-love regardless, in the words of Alice Walker. And this reminds me of Remy Ma's Conceited, which I also loved back then but was too young to really know exactly why. Now I know. Moving on, let's talk about Rhapsody. If you don't know who Rhapsody is, you should know. No, but you should know, that's the name of the song. Rhapsody was Lyricist of the Year at the 2020 BET Hip Hop Awards, and it's songs like this that remind you exactly why. Rhapsody was on that song with Busta Rhymes, and all I can think about is her second verse. Also, Rhapsody's a womanist through and through. She dropped Layla's Wisdom in 2017 based on life lessons that she got from her grandmother, then turns around and drops the album Eve in 2019, in which every song on the album is named after a woman that inspires her. Go listen to Rhapsody and tell me her pen ain't like that. Speaking of pen, have you heard Woman by Doja Cat? Like, have you heard the writing? I tell my friends all the time, they can vouch in the comments. I heard Bitch I'm a Cow by Doja Cat, and while everyone was laughing, I was like, what, no, are you listening to the pen? Do you hear the metaphors, the extended metaphors? And of course, Doja becomes Doja a few years later, and I feel like the Oprah meme. Doja Cat is really like that. Keep streaming Woman by Doja Cat, especially this month. Moving on, I need so many people, so many more people to give Noname her flowers and her respect. And I think you would if you listen to songs like Rainforest. Great writing, environmentally conscious, anti-capitalist rage, what's there not to like? That song gives you a lot to think about, which is no surprise because Noname is really a thinker. Noname really be reading books. Chances are your favorite rapper don't got a book club. Your favorite rapper ain't open a library to educate the politically and socially miseducated. She's the new vanguard, and her album is confirmed on the way, so be on the lookout. Lastly, Lizzo. Lizzo is a rapper. She raps in her songs consistently. Yes, she also sings. Yes, she plays the flute, but she's also a rapper. Have you heard About Damn Time? Want to talk about inventive language in hip-hop, sound alliterations, cadence, bars, just overall mic presence? She has it all. We've all been saying these bars. They've been trending on TikTok, but there's a reason why it's an earworm. And I can tell you from experience that you don't write like this unless you're really a rapper. In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up. Feeling fussy, walking in my Balenciennes, trying to bring out the fabulous. And she does this effortlessly, flowing in between rap and song in a way that makes you forget that she's really a rapper. We will not sleep on Lizzo's pen. We will not be casual about Lizzo's pen. I want to hear about your favorite woman in hip-hop. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and as always, like and follow for more content.
So I'm big on fat shaming. Now, of course, this movement of fat acceptance is all across social media. And there is this woman who is, I guess, a fat representative. Her name is Samira Miller. She's got 1.5 million followers, by the way. So there is, yeah, definitely a following for being openly fat. And
Candace, if you're going to try to degrade me, at least say my name correctly. Samira. You know, I watched your whole 6-minute, 23-second violent discriminatory rampage toward me and other fat people. And all I have to say is, I feel sorry for you. But I mean, I feel sorry for anyone whose sense of self-worth is found in a relentless pursuit of proximity to whiteness. But Candace, this message is not for you. This message is for Congress. This message is for our federal lawmakers. Fat phobia is real. Discrimination based on weight is real. It should be illegal. It should be criminalized. And Candace Owens is just one example. But fat phobia, it permeates every single structure of our society. Healthcare, education, entertainment, just to name a few. And it also lies at the intersection of other identities that are already federally protected from hate and bias. So why aren't fat bodies protected? Well, it's because it will require you lawmakers to face your own fat phobia, to unlearn your own fat phobia. And I guarantee if any of you spent just even 1 minute to understand the racist, sexist, classist, ableist history of the BMI, of other fat politics, you would understand why fat people need protection. So if you truly care about human rights, about protecting people from hate and bias, then you would understand why fat phobia should be illegal.
Governor DeSantis proposed Bill 999, which, if passed, is one of the most fascist, horrifying bills I've seen. I keep saying that, but this one's pretty bad. Look. It would remove all of these organizations from college campuses. It would ban gender studies, feminist theory, and Jewish studies. It would eliminate the centers and programs for BIPOC students and LGBTQ plus students. But this next one is even more horrifying. Tenured faculty will be eligible for review. Their tenure will be reconsidered by the Board of Trustees, who will be chosen and appointed by the governor. You heard that right. If the state disagrees with what you value and what you believe, they can remove you from being a teacher. They have a board of trustees that they specifically will choose who can be educators. This bill dictates what courses of study college students could choose to pursue, prohibiting fields of study including race and gender studies. It usurps faculty hiring decisions to the governor's appointees and allows tenure to be reviewed at any time. It prohibits spending on activities that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Listen to this last one, y'all. It creates new education requirements for prioritizing neoclassical education focused on, Western European civilization, aka white people. This is literally the definition of white supremacy. And the governor of Florida himself proposed this bill. The same guy that's most definitely going to be running for president. Attacking education is a playbook straight out of 1933 Germany. And if people want us to stop comparing what's happening in America to what happened in 1930s Germany, stop following the playbook. I keep repeating myself over and over again. When I talk about when they attack trans people, when they attack abortion, I keep saying they're not just coming for trans people. They're not just coming for abortions. They won't stop.
And the article is called The Enticing Sin of Empathy, How Satan Corrupts Through Compassion. So I just made this video recently and I want to show you what this ideology looks like in action. You're about to hear from a woman in a group called Moms for Liberty, which sounds like a vague name until you hear the talking points that come from this interview by Walter Masterson.
So you're with Moms for Liberty. So you're telling me there's a new threat besides gender ideology, besides critical race theory. What's this third one?
So social emotional learning is basically the Trojan horse that allows critical race theory, that allows the critical queer theory, teaching our kids how to feel, teaching them about their feeling. Rather than parents paying for a therapist for their children, they let the teachers do it at school.
They talk about their feelings?
They talk about their feelings all the time, or they'll say, it's called formative conversations, and they'll say, so how can we show empathy? Let's say that we have...
So empathy?
Okay, so if the word, let's say they have a word of the week, and the word of the week at my child's school was empathy. And the teacher started talking, how can we show empathy? And then she says, if you have a friend that has two moms, how can you have empathy? Well, my child comes home and says, Mom, there can be two moms.
Social emotional learning is how children are taught to process their emotions in healthy and constructive ways. How they learn about things like self-awareness and self-control. They learn how to be socially aware of the things and people around them. They also learn how to forge positive relationships, among other things. Empathy is simply the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. So I ask these questions again. Who does it benefit and who does it harm? Who does it benefit for white evangelicals to see social emotional learning as a threat to their country and to their children? And who gets harmed by these parents essentially teaching their children they don't have to have empathy for people who don't exist in the world in the exact same ways that they do? Because that's really what's happening. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and as always, like and follow for more content.
So Angela Davis found out recently that some of her direct lineage were on the Mayflower, and in the video she expressed like disbelief and shock, and so many people were like, well, why is she surprised? Like, she should know this, it's obvious. And something about that just feels so tied to white supremacy and the downplaying of black trauma and black pain. And I'm going to try to like explain what I mean when I'm saying this, because there's a difference between logically and academically knowing that something has occurred and knowing that something is possible, and then tying that direct correlation of oppression and marginalization and colonization and slavery and rape to yourself and to your family and to people that you knew or to your lineage, to your ancestry. And it's got me thinking about how, like, so often we'll do this thing with each other, like people within the same community, within the black community, when we learn something else about just how badly our ancestors were oppressed or how badly we're oppressed. We do this, oh, well, duh, well, obviously. And I even have to catch myself doing that, right? Where it's like, that's obvious. Of course they would do that. I'm starting to hate that. only in the way where we say that to someone to stifle our emotional responses. Like, no, it's not surprising, right? But emotionally grasping that, we're talking about trauma. And emotionally grasping just how much these people did not care about... Fuck, hold on. Okay, emotionally grasping just how much these people didn't and don't care about our people and dehumanize us, and just the barbaric shit that they did and still do is traumatizing. And I think in a way that's just like, you shouldn't be surprised, and it's kind of like a snarky comment and belittling, is in a way tied to us being told that Black pain and Black trauma doesn't exist. And just because logically I can understand that it's obvious that our oppression has occurred in the systems we live in, emotionally I'm tired of accepting that our oppression is obvious. I'm so tired of accepting that as like well, duh, that happens. That's not normal. It's not normal for people to be dehumanized like this. It wasn't normal for our ancestors to be dehumanized the way that they were. It's not normal. And I'm tired of it just being like well, yep, that's the way a cookie crumbles. That feels like a trauma response. I can't put my finger on it, but it feels like a trauma response related to white supremacy and epigenetics and post-traumatic slave syndrome. This shit just shouldn't be obvious. It shouldn't be a duh. It should be something we should be allowed to emotionally react to the shit that we learn every day.
What's up, y'all? Please interlude back at it again, and look who I have here!
It's me! Come on!
Yes!
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, and I know y'all been waiting for this collab, so we're gonna style Beyondre and Aaliyah Core. As always, you know I'm a mini skirt girl, so we have this mini skirt from Finesse, and we are going to put this on you, so.
Finesse does it every time.
Yeah. Okay, V has a skirt on, and now we're gonna put on a fishnet on one leg, of course. So here you go. Okay, y'all, we now have the fishnet on one leg, and now we have this top that says "Let dogs be dogs." Period. And we're gonna put the fishnet on the opposite arm. Okay, guys, we now have the top on and the fishnet, and now we're adding the belt. So we have this pink belt and a silver belt, and we're gonna put on also a pink garter. Okay, y'all, we now have the belts on and the garter, so now we're having the white moon boots, and we're gonna put white furries on top of them. So here you go. Okay, guys, we have on the furries with the moon boots, and now we're adding this Hello Kitty charm to the belt and this Aaliyah Core chain. Y'all, we have the charms on and the Aaliyah Core necklace, and now let's add some more pink. We have these pink, Hello Kitty gloves, and we also have these pink Hello Kitty earmuffs. So let's put it on. Y'all, we just put on the gloves, and we added some more little accessories, and now we're adding this My Melody plush bag. You can put this over this shoulder right here. Okay, y'all, here's the final Aaliyah Core fit.
I've been dying to get in this forever.
How do you feel? How do you feel in Aaliyah Core?
I feel gracious. I feel beautiful. I feel... I don't even know.
It got her lost for words. Like, come on, y'all. And as always, you know I gotta say Aaliyah Core today, tomorrow, yesterday, and forever. Period.
This poem is inspired by a Facebook post where I asked Black people, if you could write a letter to white people, what would you say? Dear white people, I don't even know where to start. In between my busy schedule comprised entirely of surviving white America, there is simply no time to write letters. Besides, any letter I write will most likely bring tears to your eyes, and I, for one, have had my fill of white tears. There are days I think you aren't worth my ink, that your whiteness is draining me of too much energy. Can't give you a taste of the tea for fear you'll colonize the whole kitchen. But today, I am too angry to remain silent. Dear white people, stop making everything about you and how uncomfortable you are. I honestly don't give a flying fuck about your comfort level. You have made my very existence an exercise in discomfort. It is time for you to make room at the table. Better yet, go sit in the living room. I am not here to coddle your feelings, not here for your amusement. No, you cannot touch my hair. This isn't a damn petting zoo. And stop coming into my office asking for the managers if you aren't already looking at one. Dear white people, Dear white people, stop telling me about this colorblind society you allegedly live in. Telling me you don't see race is the racist drivel I hope you choke on. Telling me you respect me but don't see my color is like saying you have to pretend I'm not black in order to respect me. But let me assure you, I am black, though there are plenty of things I'm not, like your sassy black friend. Stop saying, hey girl, when you see me. You ain't that slick. I hear the way you talk to Becky and Steve every day. You sound like Vacation on Martha's Vineyard, where you spent summers waiting in the bitter blue of the Atlantic. How I wish my toes could touch the ocean without stepping on the bones of my ancestors. Dear white teachers, why don't I know who my ancestors are? Why is only one part of my history important enough to teach? And for the love of God, stop swiveling your heads every time slavery is mentioned. Newsflash, I wasn't there. And just because I'm the only black person in this class doesn't mean you can ask me to speak on behalf of my race. I believe you really care about the opinion of black students when you stop shutting down conversations because I call a white student racist. Dear white people, why do you hate being called racist more than you hate racism? Why do you listen to Tim Wise over actual black people about the black experience? Dear white people, stop using black on black crime as a reason we shouldn't be outraged by the murder of black people by white cops. If a black person kills a black person, they will go to jail, and that is what we call justice. If a white cop kills a black person, they will get paid leave, and that is what we call justice. Apparently, justice is when a black body dies. Dear white people, every time we've written white people, we've written it in lowercase because we are tired of you capitalizing on our pain. We are angry and raw and tired and angry and raw and tired and tired and tired, but we will not rest because we know the future belongs to those who prepare for it, and you have been getting us ready for centuries.
I want to talk to y'all about something, but I'm going to use code words so this video does not get taken down. There's a man by the name of Tony Wiggins. He's a manager at Wellington Hershey Mill in Westchester, Pennsylvania. He has discriminated against black women in the workplace. Actually, as of recently, a black woman was fired by the Wellington because she decided to speak up for herself. We're going to call her Sarah. To paint the scene, Sarah is a dark-skinned woman. When Sarah first started working at this job, Tony Wiggins said that her skin was too dark and that it was ugly. Since that point, that man has been harassing her and other black women at that job. But when these women decided to go to HR because HR should be there to protect the employees, HR ain't do shit. So one day, Tony told Sarah to do some work that was out of her job description, and she said no. Mind you, there were times before where she did do work that was not assigned to her. She took on the responsibility for some assignments that she should not have done because her coworkers did not want to do them. And when she voiced this to Tony, he told her that she does not deserve any kind of recognition, that extra work means nothing, and that she's just an employee to a company, and that the company just owes her a paycheck and that's it. And because she refused to do work that was outside of her job description, that she did not have to do, Tony Wiggins called the police on her. She didn't cause any disruption, she didn't do anything illegal, and she did not do anything wrong. Knowing the dynamics between cops and black people, why would you call the cops in a situation where they were not needed? Unnecessarily calling the cops on a black woman, specifically a dark-skinned black woman, can end in her losing her life. Why even put her life at risk? Because she doesn't want to do work that's not in her job description. Out of him doing all of the things that he did, they chose to fire Sarah. This behavior is not okay at all. Black women are not safe in that environment. And it seems to me that Wellington would rather keep the bully than protect the victim. This email right here is an email that we can all email to request that something be done about this. But I'm going to go ahead and play those videos now.
That table right there.
I'm asking because you're very close to me, so you can get over. You're not going to leave?
Excuse me?
Are you going to leave? Are you leaving?
Excuse me?
Are you leaving? Yes or no?
You're calling the police on me?
Are you leaving?
You're calling the police on me?
I'm calling security. Are you leaving?
Security.
Are you
Why?
leaving? Because I asked you to leave.
But why do I have to leave? No, I'm okay out here.
I talked to Al. Al's going to call the police to have her removed from the premises. Okay? If she don't want to remove herself now, I told him to call.
Okay.
Al. Okay? All right. Okay.
It is an abomination that the Bible is used consistently on this floor. People are crying tears about God. And then when we tell you what the Bible says, love your neighbor, do for others, follow the golden rules, thou shalt do this, you don't do it. As far as I can tell, when I read the Bible, he said, go out and love people the way I've loved you, and I'll take care of the result. He says, take care of the least of these. Help the people that need them. Help the widows. Love people. The word love is mentioned over 500 times. The greatest of these is love. But y'all got opinions about everything, which is not why we're here, to be for the people, by the people, to serve the people. Now, I would feel a little differently if you had evidence that you let the government come in your house and tell you what to do, if you let your neighbors come in the house and tell you what to do, but nobody on this floor lets anybody tell you what to do, let alone the Dems. How dare you use my God for things against his people? I promise you, all the preachers in here talking about God's love, he sort of wants you to show it and not talk about it. He didn't say love everybody except the people you don't like, except trans people, except children, people of color, except the disabled. He didn't say that. He said love everybody. And then we spend a whole bunch of time trying to destroy everybody. And if it wasn't destruction, why'd you do it in the heat of the night? Why can't the people of Kentucky who put us here have the right to vote and know what's in this addendum? If you don't want to have an abortion, don't have one. If you don't want to be bothered with trans kids, don't. But how dare you tell other people, other parents that bear the responsibility for their children what they must do according to your wishes and not God's wishes.
Check out this video. I'll be right back.
If it is false, then for the good of society, and especially for the good of the poor people who have fallen prey to this confusion, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. The whole preposterous ideology at every level.
What word is defined as the use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political aims? That word is terrorism. Make no mistake, this is not just an attack of an ideology. Trans people are not an ideology. They're people, human beings. And by calling for the eradication of transgenderism from all of public life, what he's quite literally doing is calling for trans people to be removed from all of public life. And how do you get people to co-sign the eradication of other human beings? You make claims about how their very existence harms other human beings. You also use religion. You highlight false, baseless narratives about groomers and about child abuse. You make claims about the existential threat that trans existence poses to American society. Pastor Mark Burns publicly, just last year, touted all of these claims, claiming that the entire goal of trans people existing is to destabilize the entire country, and that they all should be tried for treason against the Constitution and executed if found guilty.
The LGBT, transgender, grooming our children's minds is a national security threat because it is ultimately designed to destabilize the republic. We need to hold people for treason, start having some public hearings, and start executing people who are found guilty for their treasonous acts against the Constitution.
Then they'll teach you about how having empathy is sinful, and that you have to put your empathy aside to maintain the truth of the Word of God, without talking about whose truth, whose theology is being centered in these conversations. It is assumed that white American evangelical theology is the default. There have been hundreds and hundreds of anti-LGBTQ+ laws introduced this year alone, and we know that other marginalized groups have been targeted as well. You have to see that we're actively moving towards fascism. You have to see that we're moving rapidly towards a theocracy, one that would undercut the rights of everyone, every single one, who is not white, American, straight, Christian, and male. Now more than ever, silence is violence. And I'll leave you with this poem by Kashif Andrew Graham, Esther 4:13, the New American Protest Bible. And Mordecai replied to Esther, "Don't think that because you sleep behind a white picket fence in American City, US of A, that they will not one day sterilize you, segregate you, stigmatize you, surveil you, silence you, subvert you, as they have done to others, when you kept your mouth sipping on a lavender latte." Please leave a comment to boost this important message, and like and follow for more content. Yes, there was actually an article written by Dr. Joe Rickney. He's the president and professor of theology at Bethlehem College and Seminary, and the article is called The Enticing Sin of Empathy, How Satan Corrupts Through Compassion. He argues that empathy can be a negative force in our lives by making us prioritize the feelings of the sufferers over God's truth. He wants you to use wisdom and discernment with your empathy, and make sure Satan isn't using empathy to get you to lose sight of God's moral standards just because you feel bad for the sufferer. If for some reason you don't think this is absurd, if you think, well, yeah, we have to put our empathy aside to love suffering people well, I want to ask you two questions with this fact in mind. Theology, Western theology, has always been tethered to power. Nearly everything that has been done in this country, from colonialism to chattel slavery to indigenous genocide, has been connected to a theological stance, meaning that some claim was made about God's role in all these atrocities. And the Christian God is still being invoked as these rigid and oppressive modern laws are coming to pass. So whenever power is at play in theology, which it most often is, it would be in our best interest to ask these questions. Who does it benefit, and who does it harm? So who does it benefit for the president of a seminary to teach people that exercising empathy for the suffering can be an enticing sin? That you should ignore your inclinations towards empathy, compassion, and understanding and prioritize God's truth? It benefits those in power. It benefits those who have the power to decide what they believe God's truth to be, who wield that power in society, in government, and in the academy. Those who decide whose rights and whose struggles we have to ignore in order to prioritize God's truth. And the irony is that one of his seminary's core values is concern for the oppressed. Which brings me to the second question. Who does it harm? Who does it harm when we're told to turn off our empathy for those who are suffering? When we're taught that Satan can use empathy against us? Does it not harm the suffering? When one can look at women, black folks, trans folks, children, and see their pain, and suppress empathy in action to appease the God of white evangelical theology, they have chosen the side of the oppressor over the oppressed. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, and as always, like and follow for more content. Check out this video.
Why don't the women want to cook and clean for the men anymore?
Because they're tired, bro. They have to go to work every day. That's not hard.
I've been talking a lot about the patriarchal resistance to partnership, and this whole conversation is legit a case study in that. Let's get into it. The question posed was, why don't women want to cook and clean for men anymore? The framing of this question is already a red flag, but let's see how it played out.
They're tired?
Yeah, they got to go to work every day, just like you.
What are they tired of?
Of working. It's not hard.
He's legitimately flabbergasted at the notion that a woman could be tired after a full day of work. The man he's interviewing, Mr. Jones, even tried to appeal to his emotional intelligence and empathy.
Aren't you tired when you get home from work?
They're working every day, so they're tired. That's why I don't want to cook or clean.
Yeah.
Notice how he didn't answer the question. I'm assuming that he knows full well what it's like to come home after a long day of work and be tired, but that's a level of empathy that he struggles to bestow to a woman, because through the lens of patriarchy, he almost sees her as subhuman. This initial exchange could have been the end of the conversation right there. After all, Mr. Jones already answered the posed question. But then Mr. Jones got the question men constantly ask whenever patriarchy is critiqued.
Do you have a woman right now?
I've been married for over 20 years.
This is important to note. The man who is a staunch defender of patriarchy is presumably single, and the man who has leaned into partnership has been married for over 20 years. And listen to how the conversation takes a turn when gender roles are brought up.
How do you not know what roles are in a marriage? You're married for 20 years. You guys don't have any roles?
Those don't exist. Because those don't exist. I'm not a white Christian man. I don't.
What are you talking about? I'm not white. What does that have to do with anything?
Oh, because you're trying to live up to like some white supremacist ideal of the
what are you talking
family.
about?
I don't subscribe.
Nobody
to
said
that.
nothing about no supremacy.
Every idea, practice, and norm comes from somewhere. And in the American context, our conceptualization of gender roles largely comes from white Christian men, as do many of the other norms in our society. I've said it here before. Women by and large want partnership. Men under patriarchy want servitude and submission, and that is the disconnect. And this kind of role inflexibility is rooted in white supremacy. Our ancestors in Africa knew well to adapt their roles based on the needs of their societies and villages. The men who understand this context and lean into partnership come away with happier marriages and long-term relationships. And the men who refuse to concede this find themselves single, asking questions like this.
What do you mean there ain't no roles?
Leave your thoughts in the comments and like and follow for part 2.
When I see a white person, I do call them European American. And I'm African American, she's...
This video is so funny, and it's a great example of how we center whiteness in language, but I wanted to talk about the history in America of these hyphenated ethnicities. I didn't realize until I read The Ethnic Project that all of these ethnicities were really created to separate different minority groups from Blackness. Firstly, these ethnic groups often didn't consider themselves a group until the lens of race in America was directed towards them. So Asian Americans, for example, did not consider themselves a group. This was lots of different cultures. But in order to separate the group from blackness, creating a caricature of ethnicity while simultaneously separating themselves from a lot of their actual cultural identity became a way to carve out a niche that was not black in an attempt to get closer to whiteness. This is similarly why in the 80s there was a push to use the term African American. The use of the term African American was first promoted in 1988. The term African American denotes a heritage, an origin, and a present, and it is meant to imply equality with other hyphenated Americans. Ethnicity seeks to displace nature and biology, which is associated with race, and to put culture in its place. The move to the term African American, then, is perhaps less a look back to Africa and more a reach toward an ethnic identity that is rooted in something other than race. Contrarily, the demographic that identifies with whiteness benefits from the association with race versus ethnicity, which is why often when an ethnicity is accepted into the frame of whiteness, the hyphenated ethnicity goes away.
I am so black. How black are you? They used to call me Blackie, but I am so black. How black are you? Now they call me Chocolate. I am so black. How black are you? The other girls want to be shaped like me, want hips like me, want lips like me, get surgery to look like me. I am so black. How black are you? Creation would not exist without me. It would not exist without the woman. It would not exist without the womb of a black woman. Culture would be so dull without our voices and their various accents and tones. Our sounds are so black, but still provides light in the darkness like a moon. Black in daylight, black in twilight, and black in the afternoon. I am so black. How black are you? I'm in STEM and graduating in May. I am so black. I am so black. Despite the statistics, I've made it to stand here today black. As the 36% of students in four-year institutions, black. I represent the 3% of black women in science. I'm so black. I represent an even smaller statistic because I am Liberian. I am so black. I am so black. I exude confidence and intelligence. My mahogany represents brilliance. I am so black. How black are you? The color of my berry is the reason for my sweet juice. I am so black. How black are you? Whether I wear my fro natural or pressed, my race is blessed and still the best. I don't need an S on my chest for you to know I'm super. I don't need to prove being black is superior. Black is the darkest color, meaning it is deep. It is the complete absorption of visible light, meaning it packs heat. I am so black. How black are you? I could have mentioned oppression, but instead I kept this poem upbeat.
This world is so crazy and this world is so unfair. And things like this weekend where people will argue back and forth over a word. When life is not guaranteed for none of us. And I continue to talk about systemic oppression and black mental health and how people in this society don't give a fuck about people who look like me. I've had one of the worst weekends of my life. And you white people want to get mad over a word rehoming. I lost my uncle who got hit by a white person in a hit and run. No one cares about black people in this country. So as I'm sitting here fighting huge humans over a word that I chose to use of rehoming, and I'm trying to make my mental health better, people are killing my family, a family that I didn't even get to be with because this same system took me from them for being poor. I am so done. I miss my uncle. My uncle came to live with me after my mom and my sister died in a car accident. And he struggled with substance abuse, and he struggled with being on the street, and he struggled with mental health, and he struggled with everything that black men like myself struggle with, only to be taken off of this planet by someone's useless, just meaningless act. In the last 4 years, I've lost my mom, my sister, my auntie, my grandpa, and my uncle. I can't lose anything else. Not to mention 6 platforms on this stupid-ass app that I've constantly had to rebuild because no one likes me talking about race or telling the truth. I am so dead, I'm so dead, I'm so dead. The next time you feel like addressing a black person or holding them accountable for using the word, just understand that we're going through things, and our whole families for generations have been going through things that y'all will never understand. And no, I'm not okay. And no, I'm not going to be okay. Because I know even after today, I still have to live in this fucking world as a black man and deal with people who don't even care if I'm alive or not. So I would say shine your light, but there's no more light to shine.
My chance to like come back and like kind of be a kid again, like, you know, really like fulfill the storyline.
I haven't heard anybody say this yet, so I will say it. TikTok is a threat because it is shifting what we value as a collective. My name is Dr. Chelsea, and I'm a neurodivergent educator, writer, and creator, and I'm known on this app for creating the unmasking process. And unmasking is about moving beyond what we have been socially conditioned to believe about ourselves, about others, and about our human experience. And it guides us to remove the mask and create a life that aligns with our needs, values, and purpose. And I spoke about unmasking through the lens of late diagnosed neurodivergence, but unmasking can and should be applied to any human being. Our souls enter this world innocently, and we absorb our experiences, both good and bad, as truth. Our trauma teaches us fear, and our spirit teaches us discernment. And as we learn to love and trust ourselves, we understand how to see the difference. But when something happens that shifts our perspectives, we think back to the moments where we questioned ourselves and didn't trust our intuition, or when we had that idea and then we saw somebody else thrive with the same one. And those moments come and they smack us in the face. And if we're honest, this app has smacked so many of us in the face. It makes me emotional because this app that I initially avoided showed us the beauty and duality of the human experience. It humanized us as we connected in ways we have never experienced in our lifetimes. TikTok connected our experiences. We were told that our phones were distracting us from the world, but when our worlds became so isolated, we turned to this app and realized we were not as different as we were taught to believe. TikTok created a platform for human intimacy, a place where we can feel safe, a place where we can gather information and knowledge and make informed decisions about our lives for the first time. We laughed, we cried, we healed. TikTok was the place where we can be authentically ourselves. We didn't have to be performative. We didn't have to make sure our lives were perfectly created and curated to be accepted. We could just simply be. As we continue to connect and heal, our values begin to shift. We move away from valuing the things that once divided us, like money and social identity. And as our values shift, it is a threat to the institutions that depend on our labor, money, and brokenness to sustain. So if this app disappeared, I am challenging us to bring our connections outside of this app and into the real world. Connect with others in a real way. Travel, speak to the stranger. Girl, write that book. It may not happen overnight, but I refuse to go back to the life that capitalism curated for me. And I'm going to carry the lessons that TikTok taught me, that I am valuable, I am worthy of space, and that I have purpose. And so do you.
And God said to me, here's the problem. You guys in the church can be so hypocritical. He said, in the African American church, you really got to be careful. I said, what do you mean? He said, because you are guilty of condemning the Supreme Court system and preaching against something. But if you look at half of our choirs, and a great number of our artists that we call abominations and we call demons, we demonize and dehumanize the same people that we use, and we don't say nothing about the gay choir director because he's good for business. As long as the choir sound good, I ain't saying nothing about his sexuality. We have done what the slave master did to us: dehumanize us, degrade us, demonize us, but then use them for our advantage. It's hypocritical to talk about the Supreme Court and calling them Sodom and Gomorrah, which is not what it's all about. But if that's the case, half our churches have been Sodom and Gomorrah for 100 years. He told me, boy, you got to re-examine yourself. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, on one hand, you quote homosexuality is an abomination from Leviticus. But you say that right after you ate some shrimp, some catfish, and some lobster. You quote Leviticus while you're wearing a wool blend suit. It's also in Leviticus that you shouldn't wear mixed linens. It's in Leviticus that if your wife is on her cycle, that you shouldn't go in the same house with her or even sleep on the same bed with her. That's in Leviticus too. Here's my point. We pick and choose the scriptures that we want to use to beat folk up with, rather than look at our own lives. Let me tell you something. If God wanted to judge America, he wouldn't need the Supreme Court system. If he wanted to judge America because of sin, he would have judged me in '88 at the Freaknik in Atlanta. Y'all ain't saying nothing to me. These folks are abomination. They're nasty. Tell you what you do then. Go find every song that's been written by a gay person for the last 100 years and don't sing it in church. Let's see how many songs you can minister on that Sunday. Bishop, don't tell me what the Bible says about homosexuals and you change wives like we change underwear. Sit yourself, your hypocritical self.
Check out this video.
Money doesn't just follow mastery. Money follows management. Your bank account reflects how much God thinks you can handle based on how you've handled what he's already given you.
I've shared over and over again about the biblical issue of tithing and why it was never a command given to Christians. This is what I mean when I say tithing is not a Christian practice and it wasn't about money. The tithe was given by the law of Moses, and it was a tenth of the produce of the land given to support the Levites for their work in the temple. It included grain, fruits, and animals from the herd and flock. But I want to talk about what these specific teachings about tithing imply about God by way of theodicy. And I'm going to center the black perspective in this. Theodicy, again, is the kind of theology that questions, interrogates, or defends the goodness and justice of God in the face of the existence of evil. It is how we explain evil and suffering in the way we talk about God. And this is one of the more common charts used to explain theodicy. The Western Church, by and large, holds these two beliefs about God. Number one is that God is good or omnibenevolent. We hear this with statements like God is love or God is good all the time and all the time. I know you finished that. You grew up, I know you finished that. The second belief is that God is all-powerful or omnipotent. And this goes beyond just spiritual power. Mike Todd brought up that the earth belongs to God and everything in it. That God has the resources.
You're missing it. God has enough resources to get everybody everything they need. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. They make streets out of gold in heaven. The resources are available.
In a capitalist society, money is tied to suffering because when you don't have money here, you suffer. And you don't have to do much digging to see how black folks disproportionately suffer due to systemic realities that you can't just theologize away. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, where this church is located, 34% of black residents live in poverty. Black children are 5 times more likely to live in concentrated poverty than white children in Oklahoma. And the alleged solution to the systemic issue for them, for those who live paycheck to paycheck, is for them to give 10% of what they don't have so they can empower God to bless them.
You don't rob God of money. You rob God of the opportunity to bless you. Are you still his child? Yes. But this thing that I have for you, I can't give you because you're disobedient. I see God over the balcony of heaven like, God, you dumb. Every 1st and 15, they play me every time. And they don't know I got all of this stored up for those who manage what I give them right.
If God is standing over the balcony of heaven hoarding resources as black people suffer, I think it begs the question, in the words of professor, activist, and Reverend Naomi Washington Leap Hart, do Black Lives Matter to God? I was tagged in a video recently of a Mormon church leader talking about tithing in a way that kind of lines up with this theology.
One of the first things a bishop must do to help the needy is ask them to pay their tithing. If a destitute family is faced with the decision of paying their tithing or eating, they should pay their tithing. The sentiment of they can't afford to needs to be replaced with they can't afford not to.
I know this sounds more inflammatory. He's plainly saying if you have to choose between tithing and eating, you choose tithing. That we help the needy by teaching them about tithing. Mike Todd talks about choice as well, though. That God wants people to choose to give a tithe in order to prove their love to God.
The reason why God doesn't take your money and he gives you the choice or the freedom to give it, because it cannot be love if there is no choice. What God is saying to everybody is you prove what you actually have in your heart when you actually do what I ask you to do. If you love me, the commandment says, obey my commands.
The idea is that you have to choose to give God money, and that if you don't choose to or can't afford to, then you'll suffer financially. Then he makes this claim.
This is not about legalism. This is about love. Oh, God. I wish I had 10 weeks.
But where's the justice? Where's the love? How is this teaching just and loving to those who actually have to choose between tithing and eating, between tithes and running water or electricity, between tithing and health insurance, for example? He also said that tithing is a test, that God has to test people so they can prove to God what they can manage. He even sets himself up as an example.
The tithe is a test. When we tithe, we give God the opportunity to bless us. I'm just telling you what changed my life. When I started setting aside what was forbidden.
But again, if people have to choose between tithing and taking care of basic life necessities, especially now as the cost of living is higher than it's been in decades, what does this imply about the justice of God, about the love of God? And if this is who we're being taught that God is, if this is what we're being taught that divine justice looks like, it begs to me Professor Washington Leap Hart's question, do Black lives matter to God? Or to those who believe in this interpretation of God, do they matter to you? Please be sure to check out my other videos about tithing mentioned in the caption. Love and light to you all, and as always, like and follow for more content.
This is what God asked for. This is what you get afterwards.
They look like royalty. They look like high royalty. Cheryl will be Cheryl. I don't know why we keep calling her. She's like an auntie. Like, a lot of us want to break her hip. Okay? We need to stop throwing away the auntie card so loosely. Her daughter, the green. I love green on Black people, my lord. She looks like Nigerian royalty. Oh, and the Bantu nods. To Put it appropriately. Let me break them glasses. Nope, let me try again. Giving kitchen backsplash. Come on now. Disco ball. Yes. It kind of looks like it was peed on by the end of like, we get to the ass and I'm like, go ahead, girl. Why is it a little yellow? Like you need to hydrate a little bit more. Hydrate. But I still like it. Why is he standing like big ass Wizard Kelly from Proud Family? Queen Latifah quite literally did not look bad in a single damn thing. Face card never declines. It's always on her. It is always loaded. At him, y'all. He's adapting. He's adapting. Look at that hand placement. 35-year-old black men don't even do this yet. He's ahead of his time. He's adapting to his environment. That beard. Nope. Let me. Okay, last time. God, I looked at his hands. Looked at his hands. One thing about Principal Ava, she will give you a strong middle part. She will give a strong middle part. That is a nice sidewalk. The dress, it fits her like a glove. It's giving very old Hollywood. Betty Boop, if you will. Like, it's very Betty Boop. Ella said, I got one more fit for you. My sister Closet, may she rest, but like, I'm gonna show you this leg.
If you only watch a single video about the TikTok ban, I want it to be this one.
The United States has never before banned a social media company from existence, from operating in our borders. And when the United States is proposing a very major move that has something to do with significant risk to national security, one of the first things that happens is that Congress receives a classified briefing. And I can tell you that Congress has not received a classified briefing around the allegations of national security risks.
Speaking of national security risk, Meta, which has posed a threat to our national security and allowed for foreign intervention in our elections, is still available in this country. Meta also participates in the sale of our private data. The owner of Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, is largely behind the lobbying to get rid of the app because he's been trying to purchase it since 2016.
Turns out Mark Zuckerberg has a dark past with TikTok that he doesn't want anyone knowing about right now. It's no secret that the banning of TikTok in the US would benefit Meta. But the lengths that Zuck has gone to make it happen is shocking. But before he wanted to get rid of it, he wanted to own it. In 2016, Zuckerberg was in serious talks with the founders of Musical.ly, which is now TikTok. But when the deal never happened, he tried to copy it with an app called Lasso. If you've never heard of it, it's because it failed miserably. But then when TikTok started taking off and Trump wanted to ban it in 2020, he began aggressively lobbying against TikTok in Washington. In a private dinner at the White House, he argued that China's internet firms posed a threat to American businesses and, quote, should be a bigger concern than reining in Facebook. Remember his position on China because this gets crazy. Now, after TikTok survived the first ban, the Washington Post received leaked emails confirming that Mark Zuckerberg paid a large consulting firm last year to organize a nationwide campaign with the primary goal of turning the public against TikTok. He officially entered his villain era at this point. One email read, dream would be to get stories with headlines like from dances to danger. How TikTok has become the most harmful social media space for kids. This was in reference to dangerous trends that supposedly started on TikTok, but after investigation turned out to have originated on Facebook. Other messages the firm was trying to push was that TikTok is the real threat, especially as a foreign-owned app that is #1 in sharing data that young teens are using. Sounds a lot like yesterday's hearing in Congress. But before he was worried about data being shared to China, he wanted to be in China. In efforts to get Facebook unbanned in the country, he learned Mandarin to give speeches, touted Chinese science fiction books to all of his followers, posted a photo of himself jogging through Tiananmen Square, and here's the wildest part, he even asked Chinese President Xi Jinping to bestow an honorary name on his then unborn daughter during a White House dinner. Fast forward to today, and all that hard work might just be paying off. And unfortunately for Mark Zuck, if anyone wants to look this stuff up, it's all public information.
It's very self-evident that lobbyists like Mark Zuckerberg and the politicians whose pockets they line are standing to gain a lot from this. But this isn't the only thing that Congress and US politicians are gaining from this transaction.
I just saw the report that says how many of the committee members of yesterday's TikTok committee recently purchased stocks in TikTok's competitors. And I forgot about the insider trading shit that happens in Congress, but I want you to think for a second. This isn't them just knowing information that'll change the value of stocks. This is them actually creating policy that will change the value of stocks and buying and selling stocks based on that. That's stock market manipulation.
You heard that all correctly. Not only do US politicians not have sufficient evidence to move forward with a ban, but they are also taking hush money from corporate lobbyists so that they can invest into those corporate lobbyist companies and make money out of this ban. And if you thought it was as simple as getting a VPN and jumping back on the app, well, it's not.
I'm not really worried about a TikTok ban in the US. Why not? If it's banned, I'll just get a VPN or download the APK or use Tor or whatever. And the Restrict Act, which is in the Senate right now, has some serious penalties for doing that. $250,000 on the civil side, plus up to $1 million in criminal penalties and up to 20 years in jail. And they can take your phone or any products you were planning to sell on TikTok. It also exempts the Secretary of Commerce from the Paperwork Reduction Act for the purposes of implementing this act. So theoretically, they could also demand that you turn over sensitive personal information and then bury you in requests for paperwork.
Whether or not you use TikTok, this affects every American. This is not an issue of left or right. This is an egregious example of how the US government is stripping away our First Amendment right to freedom of speech and taking dirty money while using dirty political tactics to financially benefit from us. This is bigger than just TikTok.
My mother used to say, if one of my children become a dyke, a bull dyke is what they called them back in that day, I'll kill them. She took me to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist was like, well, what do you think is wrong? And she said, well, she's just not normal. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, okay, I am normal.
The raids that went on, just because someone would decide, okay, it's time to go raid this place.
So there was a part of me that wanted to be a traditional gal. I thought that was my right path. I remember early on thinking I would never go into a gay bar.
What's most painful was how I reacted to other homosexuals, other people, non-heterosexuals. I was very mean, because if I joined the other side of the team, then I'm safe.
And my job was to give people who were gay discharges, undesirable discharges, because they weren't fit for service.
I thought if I got married and had a baby, I would be okay. Then I wouldn't have to tell my mother that I like girls. I wouldn't have to tell anyone that I like girls. I would be the norm.
At that point, my mother was, of course, mortified. And she just decided that the best thing to do to cure, so-called cure, was to get married. So I got married at 14 years of age.
I was always looking for that partner in someone else. Never found him. Never found them. I've never had a lover. I've never had a partner. I've observed that happening to lots of gay people in their lives when they give up.
I would recommend saying 10 times a day, this is me, and it's okay, and I really like me.
I think I lost a lot of years not being myself.
For the rest of my life, if nothing else happens, wow, this is me.
There is no reason for some of y'all to hate pronouns the way that you do. There is no reason. Y'all can't stand, y'all hate trans people, non-binary people so much. It got you beefing with pronouns. Parts of speech, literary devices. Do you know how embarrassing that is? It is so embarrassing. And honestly, it's not a difficult concept at all. You guys complain, it's so difficult. No, it is not difficult. And let's say you do misgender somebody. Let me show you how easy it is to rectify that situation. You misgender someone, you go, oh, I'm sorry, my bad. What's the correct pronoun? In a discussion. 10 times out of 10, they're going to tell you, and that's the end of the discussion. But no, you drag it out. And this is the reason you drag it out. I want you guys to critically think for yourself, but I don't believe that you will, so I'm going to do it for you. Y'all drag it out because you have been taught, we live in a system where we know that language, literary devices, parts of speech, etc. have been used to divide. And the T is, a lot of y'all, a lot of us know that to be true because we have been on the receiving end of the marginalization and oppression used in language. So the fact that there is a group, an outside group you're not a part of that is saying, hey, respect me, include me, you don't want to fucking do that shit because you get off on the power that is used by using language to divide. You get off on that power because you're so used to being oppressed by that same power. And beloved, I'm embarrassed for you. I'm so embarrassed for you. Because you think using the tools of the people that have oppressed and marginalized you is going to get you a crumb of fucking privilege, and it really gets you nothing. And it's additionally embarrassing when you are part of a marginalized group trying to get that crumb of privilege, and especially black people. I'm talking to us now. Because we want to be so for progression, and we got to progress the times, da-da-da-da. But then when the progression happens, if you can't relate to that progression, all of a sudden you're using the same white supremacist-ass tools against each other. Do you see how embarrassing that is? And it makes me wonder whether or not y'all actually want progression or you just want to be on top. Because clinging to the same shackles that had our people shackled and enslaved is embarrassing. Not embarrassing, a disgrace to what they went through. Leave trans people alone. Call people by what they want to be called. Okay? And if it's so difficult for you to get the concept of a pronoun and so difficult for you to get the concept of transgender, cisgender, agender, bigender, pick up a book. Get on your phone that you're on all day long and Google some shit and shut up about it.
The city of Philadelphia just sent out a mass text to the 1.5 million residents of Philadelphia, informing everyone to start using bottled water instead of drinking water from their taps, because there has been a latex pipeline leak in a river that connects to the Delaware River, where everyone in Philadelphia gets their drinking water from. Over 8,000 gallons of latex material, similar to the same material that was in a train that exploded in East Palestine, Ohio, has now been leaked into the drinking water of the residents of Philadelphia. The birthplace of freedom now does not have water that it's sure enough that people can drink. And I only know about this because my friends who live in Philly sent me a screenshot of the text that they were sent. I then tried to go to the Philadelphia Inquirer's webpage to read about it, but that's behind a paywall. Luckily, I was able to go to our local PBS affiliate to find out more information. I myself am not affected by this. I don't live in the city of Philadelphia. I live in an outlying suburb, and my water comes from a different area. However, a lot of my friends live in Philadelphia. 1.5 million Americans live in Philadelphia, and they are currently unsure of the quality of their drinking water. The government has said that they honestly don't quite know, but they're being cautious. So just, get bottled water. But 1.5 million people are now looking for bottled water. 1.5 million people. But yeah, it's TikTok that we need to be having congressional committees about. Sure thing, guys. Great system we got going here.
You can do everything right and you will be treated with racism and scorn.
Please check out that creator's video. A lot of people have asked me how I feel about the hearings with the CEO of TikTok, and I couldn't put it any better. She's basically saying that if you're Asian, it doesn't matter how many of their boxes you check. You can have the right education, you can serve in the military, you can have the right job, you can have a family, and you will still be treated with anti-Asian prejudice. And this should be a wake-up call to the Asian diaspora, particularly those that align with whiteness, that it doesn't matter how much you align with whiteness, you will always be treated as less than, because the model minority myth is a myth. And the only way to address anti-Asian sentiment is to engage in anti-racist work and to help fight against white supremacy culture. And that's something that Black people have been telling us ever since we arrived in the country. Now, the only thing that I disagree with the creator about is that she says that with his educational, military, and professional background, the CEO of TikTok should be the Republicans' wet dream. I actually feel that these hearings are the Republican wet dream, where they have an opportunity to be anti-Asian, to scare the American public, and to strong-arm a business deal. That's pretty much the trifecta. Because there are multiple social media platforms in the United States that are doing actual harm, and the government is not nearly as interested in doing anything about that. They are going after TikTok because it is Chinese owned and they want to profit from the United States operations. And I think that ultimately TikTok would rather make some money in the sale of the US operations to a United States corporation than lose everything by being banned. Something that I do wonder is how these hearings would have played out differently if Tom Mayer was still the CEO of TikTok.
So y'all remember a few weeks ago when the Supreme Court in Kenya ruled to give LGBTQ plus people the right to association just like everybody else, and there was a serious spike in homophobia, especially in our government? So a lot of people's argument against that, myself included, was that the government is using this as a distraction to deflect from the high cost of living and the ways in which they're exacerbating inequality while plundering our resources. But now I'm realizing it's a lot more insidious than that, and by calling it a distraction, we're really undermining just how serious this issue is. But then a few days ago, all but 2 MPs in Uganda voted in their most oppressive anti-LGBTQ plus bill to date, which makes it illegal not just to be queer, but to identify as queer publicly, to support queer people publicly, and to even house queer people. And that made me realize this isn't a distraction. This is step one in their plan as fascism is on the rise globally. There's an inherent danger that queer people, especially trans people, pose not just here but everywhere in the world. We're a reminder that everything that we have been taught that is innate about society, that is a fact, that is immutable, is not at all. In fact, all of this shit is made up. We're born and told that there's men and women and that we're inherently different and that there's roles that we play, and because of that, the world has to be the way it is. And here come queer and trans people saying, everything you know about gender and sexuality is essentially made up, and we can rewrite this if we want. And our leaders have realized that that is particularly dangerous because if we begin to question gender and sexuality, what won't we question? Soon we're going to see women and feminists on the continent become even more radical than they have ever been and say it's not just that men and women are different but should be equal, but that we all need freedom and liberation and patriarchy as a whole should be thrown in the bin. The general public is going to question and has begun to question if capitalism really works and how it can be effective if most of the resources are owned by just a very few people. How does it make sense that our politicians become wealthy and rich off of being in government? And does our government even exist to help us or to serve the people or to protect the rich and to protect capital? What the fuck is the use of the police? We're going to ask ourselves so many things, and we are already. And I think that's very scary to these people who are realizing these motherfuckers are realizing we're full of shit and want to take us out. And so that's why when I see women, especially just disenfranchised people who are so anti-queer here, I'm like, be very fucking careful. They're going to come for you next. There is no reason or rhyme or limit to systems of oppression and how far people will take it. There is a rise in fascism, and very quickly we're going to see people begin to justify all sorts of genocide, starting with that against queer people. So yeah, it's not a distraction. This is intentional, and we're about to be at war.
I am fascinated by the fact that there are people out here stating as though it's fact that the trans community, that drag queens, that the LGBTQIA plus community, that they are pedophiles, that they are groomers, when I have yet to find any research supporting these accusations. Okay. And I do a lot of research, like a lot of research. Okay. Now, y'all remember we did the series on the adultification on Black girls, right? And while I was researching that, trans individuals, drag queens, LGBTQIA+, none of them came up in my research. Would you like to know who did come up in my research? Would you like to know? When it came to the trafficking of Black and brown girls, those who solicited their services were straight, cisgendered white men. Yes, predominantly straight, cisgendered white men. Yeah. So I'm confused why states are passing laws, enacting bills to categorize drag queens as adult performers and then banning drag shows. I'm very confused by that. Because again, the research does not support the accusations. Now, if you had come to me and said that they were banning priests, pastors, football coach, your Uncle Joe. I would understand that because, again, the pedophiles and the groomers, predominantly straight, cisgendered white men, not trans people, not drag queens, and not the LGBTQIA plus community. No. I feel like they're targeting the wrong individuals. I feel like they're targeting the drag queens and the trans individuals and the LGBTQIA plus community because they just like to roll around in a stew of hate, and they're playing to their base, who also like to roll around in a stew of hate.
We need to stop medicalizing normal responses to capitalism. When we talk about mental health and work, we usually focus on the byproducts of hustle culture and exploitation, so stuff like quiet quitting, the great resignation, burnout. But what we really need to do is step back and look at the bigger picture. Our brains are not designed to do well in the system that we're currently in. Wake up, check your feed, check your texts, check your emails, go to work, get 100 things done, get home late, attempt to have energy for stuff like your kids, chores, hobbies, etc., fail miserably, feel awful, and then repeat. Our fight or flight response used to get turned on when we were getting chased by bears, and now we're having panic attacks over responding to emails. Not to mention the food we eat, the air we breathe, the cities we design are rapidly becoming less and less healthy. And any attempts to break free from this model often requires tremendous amounts of effort, or privileges that most people don't have access to, aka we are too broke and busy to heal. It really shouldn't be surprising that people are responding negatively, but instead of changing this, those in power are over-pathologizing very logical responses to a world that is incredibly stressful. You're not overworked, you're just depressed, and you need therapy, medication, coaching session to fix it. And don't get me wrong, therapy and medication is game-changing for people, but if a person's depression is being caused by burnout or poverty or isolation from loved ones, then clinical treatment is just a band-aid. One of the greatest failures of the mental health movement is that it's been siloed from other social causes. We can't divorce mental health issues from stuff like workers' rights and affordable housing and homelessness. We need to reframe advocacy as a fight for community building and stronger social safety nets, not mental health app subscriptions. Now that there's more awareness surrounding mental health issues, the next step is not to profit off of people's treatment, but to prevent them from getting sick in the first place.
Do you see trans women and girls as women and girls?
I don't know that my personal opinion has to be here.
But this bill is full of personal feelings. Feelings about how trans women and girls shouldn't be equal, shouldn't have the same protections.
Women do not wish to have their rights taken away so that other rights may be, the rights of others may be expanded.
What a natural person is defined in this bill?
I don't choose to have to reassign what I call myself just for a very minute group of people.
What would be the test to define whether or not you were female or male?
A woman is a female that has the possibility of producing eggs or ova.
I'm aging. I'm postmenopausal. I can't reproduce anymore. Am I still a woman?
I go to a lot of work and effort to not appear more androgynous as I age.
Can you help me understand where the language in this bill came from?
I talked to some groups that work on legislation like this.
Trans women and trans girls are women and girls, full stop.
And I don't agree.
I'm asking you to actually think about talking to trans folks and not just vilifying them and dehumanizing them from the House floor.
This also provides some protection for women who do not consent to gender redefining terms.
I could only imagine the control that you think you've probably lost in your own life to create something that takes control over someone else's.
Trans individuals are not a threat to my rights. as an Oklahoman, as a US citizen, as a global citizen, or as a woman.
2023, year of side quests. Here are all my goals for this year. First up, learn how to crochet.
I learned how to crochet.
Learn how to sew an outfit.
I also learned how to sew. I'm gonna upcycle this hoodie because it doesn't fit me anymore. I made this hat, but also this cropped vest, but also these shorts.
Beat my old bench press PR of 345 pounds. Learn how to cook some fun and tasty desserts from scratch.
Ta-da! Holy shit.
Organize my own K-pop cover. Learn how to do a backflip. Overhead press 225 pounds. Add a new song to my piano repertoire. Beat all the video games that I've been putting off for months.
Oh, finally.
This game was fun, but it definitely inspired a generation of vor and macrophilia kinks.
This game is so long. This game is so long.
Thank God that's over. Y'all, having goals sucks because you have to achieve them. Ambition is so overrated, so we're done with that.
When Africans protest, we are barbaric. When French people and Europeans protest, then it's like, yeah, let's do it the way the French people are doing it. They're doing it right.
This young activist is calling out double standards around support for protests in France versus those across Africa.
Hi, I'm Khatiso. I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. There were protests in South Africa on the Monday that I made that video. And then in other parts of the continent, there were protests in Nairobi, Kenya, and in Lagos, Nigeria.
Around the world, protests against French President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform bill have been celebrated as heroic. This wave of protest across France has been understood to form part of a long-standing tradition of French workers rising up to safeguard their rights. But protests in Africa rarely attract similar international attention and sometimes go unnoticed.
Necropolitics and neocolonialism are killing us. So there is a certain urgency to our protests or to our struggles, right? And so when our voices aren't met with the urgency that we want, it is disheartening.
Did you know that in November 2022, a nationwide strike took place in South Africa among unions that represent some 800,000 workers? Or what about the thousands of protesters who took to the streets of Kenya against the cost of living crisis in March 2023? Kenyan protesters even defied a government ban on rallies that came in after the protests began. But less coverage and support around protests in Africa isn't the only thing that troubles Miataza. She explains that how Africans and Black people globally are portrayed and perceived when they challenge systems of power is still influenced by violent colonial legacies.
Media has the legacy of portraying African people as barbaric, whether it be through our protests, through the way that poverty is framed in our countries. And I do think that people need to understand that these come as a product of colonialism. This was how colonialism framed African people to be. It's not just with Africans on the continent, it's also with Africans in the diaspora, looking at how Black Lives Matter was framed, looking at how Haitian people are still demonized.
How media chooses to cover a story influences public perception on events and people. Here's one example. Vandalism, property damage, and looting received widespread coverage at the Black Lives Matter protests in the US during summer 2020. But it's reported that at least 93% of the BLM protests that summer were peaceful. Nonetheless, negative images of violence and looting remain front and center for many, overshadowing the organized calls for an end to police violence in the US.
French people being the face of resistance is something that angers me because they're not the only people to have resisted oppressive forces. In as much as we praise the French, we should also be praising communities outside of Europe, people who are doing the same thing, for people who are fighting other struggles, right? I'm not dismissing or invalidating the pain that French people have or the vitriol that they might have to their administration, but what they're doing is not more, or it's not like more special than what is happening on the African continent.
Say it with me. Neurofabulous baddies don't niche down. I don't care what nobody say. If you like me and you have ADHD or you're on the autistic spectrum, you probably heard all kinds of backhanded compliments from every adult in your life growing up. Saying stuff like, oh, she's so smart. If only she could apply herself. Oh, you have so many talents. You just need to pick one thing and focus on that one thing. Or the worst one that I've ever heard yet. You so talented. Why haven't you blown up yet? Really? If I could put one dirty slap in your ear right now, and then breathe, Sata. We're not choosing violence today. Fact is, our neurodivergent brains don't work like that. Part of our genius is that we have a wealth of innovative ideas and that we are getting creative downloads all day, every day. The thing that frustrates us the most is that we don't know how to get all of these ideas out there into a world that forces us to have only one singular interest. And then when we become adults, it's hard for us to find mentors and coaches that really understand how we think. We end up spending all this money and time just for that coach to now tell us to niche down. Niche down for what? For us, it's not about niching down. It's about creating systems, workflows, and cultivating a community of people that see us and support our gifts and talents. Over the years, I've developed different strategies and hacks from my own brain so that I can be able to tap into all of my many talents in a fulfilling and sustainable way. I'm looking to connect and create community with other neurodivergent artists and creatives who no longer want to mask and want to learn new ways in which they can thrive in their creative authenticity. If you feel like you're on the same type of wavelength, feel free to book a free 30-minute session with me, link in my bio, so that we can create a unique and custom strategies for you and your neurofabulous life. Like and follow for more.
I remember seeing this video a while ago that said that white people actually do experience racism. It's just that they're on the giving end of racism and not the receiving end of racism, which means they're not victims of it, they're perpetrators of it. And it reminded me of this quote, I forgot who said it, but they said that white people's biggest fear is if black people had the same power that white people had, and that black people would treat white people the way white people treated black people. Particularly if black people could classify white people the way white people classify black people, then black people would treat white people poorly because white people treat black people poorly. And for black people, the only way we can classify white people as anything is by calling them racist whenever they are racist. Now, because to some degree, we all know what it's like to be treated a certain way because of a certain label, white people push off the label of racist, even though they're only being called racist because of the fact that they're being racist. Now, every label doesn't necessarily mean something bad is going to happen to you, but because we associate labels as a bad thing, we don't want to accept labels that's put on us, even though they're describing who we are. Which means I could be labeled a tall person, or a muscular person, or a skinny person, or a rich person, whatever it might be. Those are just labels, right? People can treat me certain ways based on a label. Sometimes it is poor treatment, depending on what the label is. But the thing we don't always remember is that whenever we put a label onto a person or onto a group of people, it doesn't mean that we don't put a label on ourselves either, right? So if I take a group of people and I put them into a box and said, these are the purple people, right? It doesn't mean I don't have a label on me. It now means I am a non-purple person or whatever color that I am person. And because I had the power to put that group into a box and treat that group a certain way, I now think if another group puts me in a box, right, they can treat me any kind of way. Hope you guys are still with me. I know this is a lot, but stick with me. And due to human nature, whenever something is new to us or confusing to us, for the most part, we kind of get afraid of it. We think it's a threat, even if it's not a threat. All right, now this is where it gets interesting, all right? So because all of our lives, we were able to recognize and use the term trans for people who are trans, right? The term cisgender, which is new to us, seems like a threat. We see it as a label that somebody else is putting onto us that we didn't put onto anybody else. So now we think we're going to be treated poorly because of that label. Even though cisgender is literally what we are if you are not transgender. So the fear we have as cis people with being called cisgender is that we see it as a box that a community that's been oppressed has put on us. And now we think that community is going to treat us the way we treated them. And we take any instance of something we don't like as an attack on us, even though it's not an attack on anybody. So just like being tall, being rich, being muscular is a label, being cisgender is also a label that describes who you are. I want us as cisgender people to understand that we are not being attacked, and I want us to fucking think.
And look, I know we both want what's best for Deshaun.
So what do you want from me?
Well, I thought...
Thought what exactly?
This wasn't my first option, by the way. As I've said, his behavior has been getting progressively worse and been trying to make sure he's having a successful time at school.
And nobody's stopping you from doing that.
He's kind of stopping me, actually.
He's 7. You can't control a 7-year-old.
Cassandra, it's not about control. You know, we're setting him up to be the best student he can be, and, you know, we're a team.
We're not a team. And I don't see how he could be the best student that he could be with a teacher like you.
Excuse me?
And now my boss is calling. I took time out of my day, away from my job, to come down here to hear you complain about my son, and you're not even doing your job.
I'm doing the best I can with your son.
If this is the best that you can do, you are the worst teacher that I've ever seen. You know, you're right. Call me Miss O'Neill. Down here wasting my damn time.
Janine? What's wrong?
Deshaun's mom, she called me a bad teacher. And it was just, I don't even know I'm crying right now.
She doesn't know what she's talking about, okay? You're a good teacher, Janine. Janine?
Who am I going to have an intergenerational conversation with? Oh. What happened?
Parent yelled at her. I'm trying to help, but I think I'm making it worse.
Okay.
Paging Educator of the Year, Mr. Eddie. Your essence is needed at the award presentation, so bring that Put'em to the gym.
Gregory, you go on ahead. I can handle this.
No, if you need me, I'll be in my classroom.
Okay.
Come on.
Thank you. So she comes in, and I told her about her son's acting out. You know, I'm trying to have a conversation, cool, calm, where we figure out what to do. I offered solutions. I was patient. I told her we're a team. And she just destroyed me. She called me the worst teacher she's ever seen.
Janine, do you believe you're the worst teacher?
I don't know. I've done everything I can for Deshaun, and it's not enough. So maybe.
So what you're gonna do is pick yourself up, dust yourself off, come back here tomorrow, and do your job.
But I didn't solve the problem. I am failing him.
I have been called a bad teacher more times than I can ever remember. People have thrown dirt on my name, others have given flowers. It's all a garden to me.
Barbara, I've never seen you fail a child. You always find a solution.
Oh, please, I do not always have the answer. In fact, there are some issues and problems that are just too difficult for anyone, even me, to solve in one school year. But if you come back here tomorrow, ready to do your job, having not given up on yourself or that student, well, that is not failure. Sometimes that's what success looks like.
What happened in Tennessee yesterday is one of the most flagrant assaults on democracy that we've seen in recent history. Justin Jones and Justin Pearson, the representatives chosen for the people, got removed for speaking on behalf of the people. Both representatives, before their expulsion, went on to give some of the most gripping and compelling speeches that I've heard from politicians probably ever. Justin Jones called out the hypocrisy of the expulsion in light of other things that have happened in that chamber. He informed Tennessee State House Republicans that people see what is going on plainly.
We called for you all to ban assault weapons, and you respond with an assault on democracy. For years, one of your colleagues who was an admitted child molester sat in this chamber, no expulsion. One member sits in this chamber who was found guilty of domestic violence, no expulsion. We had a member pee in another member's chair in this chamber, no expulsion. Since you're trying to put us on trial, I'll say what you're really putting on trial is the state of Tennessee. A state in which the Ku Klux Klan was founded is now attempting another power grab by silencing the two youngest black representatives and one of the only women, Democratic women in this body. It is in that spirit of speaking for my constituents, of being a representative of the people, that I approached this well on last Thursday, breaking a House rule, but exercising moral obedience to my constitutional responsibility to be a voice for my people, to be a voice for the Tennesseans who you choose not to listen to because of those NRA checks. For so long, this body, drunk with power, has modeled for the world what we know as nothing less than authoritarianism. And today is the climax of that behavior. But you will not be victorious because there are generations of young people who see what is going on. There are young people that as you try and beat us down, they are rising up to take back this state. That is why the nation is watching you today.
Justin Pearson's speech as a theologian was most striking to me. He captured the magnitude of the moment in the context of Holy Week, today being Good Friday. Knowing that his white Christian colleagues were responsible for the unfolding injustice, he stood in his blackness and talked about his black Jesus. This was God talk, or theology that seemed to be clearly informed by James Cone, the father of black liberation theology, who in books like God of the Oppressed, The Cross and the Lynching Tree, and A Black Theology of Liberation, saw the story of Jesus as rooted in the lived experiences of black people, who saw Jesus as a man whose mission and work were to bring good news to the poor and liberation to the oppressed. Take a listen. I'll be right back.
For all of you who still believe that our better days in Tennessee are ahead, I want to tell you that I still believe with you. Amidst this persecution, I remember the good news. Hallelujah, Jesus. I remember that on Friday, the government decided that my Savior Jesus, a man that was innocent of all crimes except fighting for the poor, fighting for the marginalized, fighting for the LGBTQ community, fighting for those who are single mothers, fighting for those who are ostracized, fighting for those pushed to the periphery. My Savior, my black Jesus, he was lynched by the government on Friday. And they thought that all hope had been lost. All the outside, it rained and it thundered and everybody said everything was over, and it was some black women who stood at the cross. It was some black women who watched what the government did to that boy named Jesus. They were witnesses, as you have been witnesses to what is happening in the anti-democratic state of Tennessee. They were witnesses to what was going on, and I got to tell you, it got quiet on Saturday. Yes, I tell you, it was a sad day on Saturday. All hope seemed to be lost. Representatives were thrown out of the State House. Democracy seemed to be at its end. Seemed like the NRA and gun lobbyists might win. But oh, that was good news for us. I don't know how long this Saturday in the state of Tennessee might last. But oh, we have good news, folks. We've got good news that Sunday always comes. Resurrection is a promise, and it is a prophecy. It's a prophecy that came out of the cotton fields. It's a prophecy that came out of the lynching tree. It's a prophecy that still lives in each and every one of us in order to make the state of Tennessee the place that it ought to be. And so I've still got hope because I know we are still here and we will never quit.
This is what a faith looks like that doesn't hinge itself on hate and fear, but on justice and love. His faith compels him to stand with the oppressed, black folks, indigenous folks, queer folks, children and mothers, etc. His faith compels him to speak up and to act. And in this hour, as we witness what is unfolding in this nation, may our faith, our spirituality, our humanity compel us towards justice and love for all people, because no one of us can be free until all of us are free. Please leave a comment or do what you can to boost this important message. Love and light to you all, and as always, like and follow for more content.
Something that still kind of haunts me to this day is during the January 6th insurrection, a lot of us were still logged into work. And that still haunts me because it visualizes the quintessential millennial sort of work life. Constantly being in this state of breaking news and things happening with our social, political, economic rights, while also having to log in and put in hours towards a corporation that we don't really care about.
This is so true. Go back and watch that full video. And this reminds me of the movie The Incredibles. Stick with me here. If you remember, Mr. Incredible, or Bob, was working at an insurance company. It is a bland, dimly lit cubicle space, typical, and he gets called into the office of his boss, Mr. Huff, who has a bone to pick. And what's the issue? Bob has been too good at helping his customers get insurance coverage. And it's only an issue because it's hurting the bigwigs or the shareholders.
Did I do something illegal? No. Are you saying we shouldn't help our customers? The law requires that I answer no. We're supposed to help people. We're supposed to help our people! Starting with our stockholders, Bob! Who's helping them out, huh?
Mr. Huff describes the company as an enormous clock, and in that metaphor describes Bob as a cog that needs to mesh together with all the other cogs. During Mr. Huff's speech, Bob is distracted by someone getting mugged in an alley right outside the office. A more pressing issue than this non-issue, right? But Mr. Huff demands full attention. Bob tells Mr. Huff that the man needs help because he's getting mugged, and Mr. Huff's response makes my skin crawl.
We're discussing your attitude. He is getting mugged. Well, let's hope we don't cover him. I'll be right back.
Bob gets up to try and go and help the guy, but his boss makes it clear.
Stop right now, or you're fired!
He makes Bob turn around and come back, to be a tiny cog in a giant clock that clearly has no interest in helping people. Now Bob is upset, and he does something that I didn't understand as a kid, but I definitely understand now.
He got away.
Good thing, too. You were this close to losing your...
This lands totally different, right? Millions of Americans are like Bob in that scene, chained to a desk, punished for helping people, dealing with sociopathic bosses and managers, often unable to fully pursue the work that feeds their soul or helps their people, unable to grieve or bear witness to what's happening in the world, unable to fully serve without mundane jobs getting in the way, a desperate need for resources making it very difficult for any of that to change. What are your thoughts about this? Feel free to share in the comments, and as always, like and follow for more content.
Slaves. Is that right or correct?
Why are we talking about slavery?
I just had an epiphany about why this video bothers us so much, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I need y'all to just vibe with me on this, because I've been thinking about it for a minute. So I've been racking my brain for about 20 hours trying to figure out what is it about this video that bothers me so much. Is it the obvious answer, like the Daughters of the Confederacy talking point about slavery? Is that what? Nah, that's not it. Is it the white woman said something racist online? That's a Tuesday. That doesn't bother me at all. So what is it about this? So I start going through the facts. Okay, there was a debate a couple of days ago. This one clip goes viral. This white woman responds to the clip on TikTok, and then she has some sort of like back and forth on Twitter. And then there's another clip that goes viral that's showing the full context of the clip. And I've actually never even heard of these two before this moment. And I don't follow them. And that's it. That's the part that bothers me. I don't know these two, but I know this whole story because this moment is going viral. That's what bothers me. It's two white people having a discussion about black people, and we ain't even in the room for no reason. And it's going viral, furthering their brands off of the discussion of our labor. I bet you can't unsee it. You can't unsee it now. And the crazy part to me is that this white person thinks that they're like doing good, but they're not. They brought up black people for no reason. Not me agreeing with the white racist woman, but why did you bring up slavery? And once you notice this, you will notice that white debaters use black struggle as their moral baseline in a lot of their arguments. They'll talk about Jim Crow, Black Code, Civil Rights Act, slavery. They love talking about all of that shit for no reason. And it's a digital version still using black labor to further a white brand, still to profit off of it, even if it's just social capital, and y'all don't see the irony in doing that. It is mind-boggling once you notice it, because all I'm thinking is, this white woman, I ain't never heard of her in my life, but now she's saying something that is literally taught in Texas school books. Like, there's a lot of nuance to that answer that she gave that you completely fucking ignored in her response. So that is wild to me, because like, you're not adequately equipped to have that argument with her, but you brought it up anyway. And all you did was you gave a white racist woman a platform, a megaphone, and virality a couple of times this week, and we're supposed to give you flowers over that. Black people are supposed to just tap dance. I can't believe I'm saying this, but again, she was right. You shouldn't have brought up black people for no reason. I can't unsee it now.
There is so much power in powerlessness. So a video popped up on my FYP, as always. It was a video I'd stitched before. It was a black man on a podcast saying that black women were more of a threat to black men than white men. Now, you may see an angry black man, but what I see is a man who feels powerless. It occurred to me that men, more specifically the men in our community, who feel powerless will muster up enough power, just enough power to oppress the women in that community. But what they won't do, right, is muster up enough power to alleviate the thing that is making them feel powerless in the first place. Imagine getting shot, and instead of going to the hospital, you shoot the neighbor. Imagine your house being on fire, and instead of putting out that fire, you set the neighbor's house on fire. The most powerless men use whatever power they do have to make other people feel powerless too, instead of doing the work to become powerful. Powerless men do whatever it takes to make the women in their community feel just as powerless as they feel. But what they're seeing is that a lot of black women are not powerless, and we don't pretend to be. We have regained much of our power by getting degrees, through financial stability, sexual freedom, and being single. Black women are the downfall of the black family. No, black women are healing the black family by not participating in it. We are not participating in it until men change the way that they have been socialized to view black women. It's that simple. If you want black women to participate in the black family, give her a damn good reason to. All in all, when men can't make you feel as powerless as they do, they villainize you. And black women are sick of being villainized. You aren't mad at us. You're mad at your mom, right? And that's not being mean. You're mad at your mom, and your mom is mad at herself because no matter what she did, you still turned out to be the man that your sorry-ass daddy was. Please heal for the community's sake.
What's up, y'all? It's Aaliyah's Interlude, and I'm back at it again. And guess who I'm styling in Aaliyah Cord today?
Hi, it's Lizzo. L to the I to the ZCO.
Yes, we have the queens linking up. I know this is Aaliyah Cord, so we gotta use some fishnets. So we're gonna do a red fishnet on one arm and a white one on the other. And we're using this Yitty set that's just gonna look so incredible. And then Lizzo has Yitty on too, like.
Period. I got the nearly naked in the new color peacock.
Yes, get into it, y'all.
This is cute as fuck already. Like.
Yes. Okay. So Aaliyah Cord for the bad bitches, y'all. For the bottoms, we're going to be using these shorts right here from Yitty again, and we're gonna put a fishnet on one leg as always. We have the fishnet on one leg on, yeah. And now we have these chain belts right here that we're gonna put on, and we're also gonna add this red little puff right here. We now have the belt and the little puff ball, and now it's time for the garter and the sleeves right here. So let's put it all together. Yeah, y'all hear the vocals, like, but y'all, for real, it's time for the moon boots. We got the red moon boots, and we're gonna put these white furry leg warmers on top. So here you go, Lizzo.
Oh, okay, bye. You know what time it is.
Yeah, get into it. And y'all, we have the exclusive Yitty chain, because that's what we repping all day.
Yitty bitch.
And we also have this red necklace right here, and we're gonna pair them together.
See the adornments.
Yeah.
So you can see the sexy Yitty.
That part.
Ooh.
They go hand in hand. They mean the same thing. Ooh. And y'all, we have these earmuffs from Handsome Girly, and we're gonna put them on because it's made with love, and we have to give it to Lizzo, of course. Yeah, you look so good.
I feel really good. I'm not
gonna
lie. And now I'm stepping into the full power of Aaliyah Cord.
Yes.
Where am I going? Where are we going?
Let's go to the club.
Let's go to the beach, bitch.
Yeah.
We gotta just like.
We gotta stunt.
We gotta stomp the streets.
Gotta serve.
We gotta pound the pavement.
Duck nail supremacy.
Quack quack, bitch.
Yeah, get into it or get lost.
Oh,
wait. Lizzo, I have to ask you a question.
What?
How do you feel in Aaliyah Cord?
I feel like a sexy, bad bitch. I'm about to make so many videos.
Yes!
This really is like confidence. confidence and identity.
Oh my
That's what you're doing
gosh.
for people. You're
Thank
liberating
you.
people. Thank you for
Right.
this.
No, it's crazy because Lizzo makes everyone feel like that through her music, through her videos, everything. So let's all say thank you to Lizzo. And make sure you shop Yitty because Yitty is that girl.
Yes.
And as always, Aaliyah Court, today, tomorrow, yesterday, and forever. Period. Bye, guys.
Bye.
I'm sorry, but gentle parenting is for gentle kids.
So I hear this so much, and y'all have no idea what I've been through and why I still use gentle parenting for everything. I have been slapped. I have been spit on. I have been bitten. You have been backhanded by a 6-year-old. I promise it's emasculating. I promise. Anything you can think of a child doing. I've had a child throw a trash can at me. I've had to take knives and scissors from children who were trying to stab me. I promise gentle parenting works. But now this is what y'all need to understand. Now, I'm from the hood. I'm from Atlanta. I'm from the SWATs. Like, I'm from the hood where folks get cat all day and have the night. I'm from the hood where we stomp you out and don't say nothing about it. And I still use gentle parenting. Now, I use it differently than a lot of people. I'm trying to tell y'all, it's not the old, oh, little Billy, stop, don't do that. No, that's not what it is. It's, hey, now I already told you like 2 times that that's not what we're doing. So we're doing this now. This is off limits. You're not doing that no more. Come sit your butt over here. It's not about acting gentle or talking like you're super No, it's not any of that. It's recognizing that you have boundaries and you can be respectful with talking with somebody, but you're also effectively communicating. You're effectively establishing boundaries. You're not letting kids cross that boundary. You're teaching them why they shouldn't do the things that they want to impulsively do. And it works for any child because I have done it for many children. About 30 plus kids I have worked with. I work with kids in the middle school every day and they hood. It's a Title I school in the hood and it works with them. I'm telling you, on everything I love, it can work. You just don't know the proper way to implement it. That's why I'm here. That's why there's a whole TikTok community of gentle parent professionals that are trying to tell y'all what to do. It's not what y'all think it is. Step outside yourself, watch my videos, watch other people's videos so you can actually learn what gentle parenting looks like practically.
What?
Oh, my baby's
hand is bald.
There was this jerk in class, and I felt unpretty, and then I supercharged the amino acids, and now I look like this.
Oh, my poor baby. Sweetheart, we live in a society that's never valued our natural hair.
People tend to criticize what they don't understand, so they tell us our natural hair is sloppy, unkept, unprofessional, or even ugly.
But they're wrong. Our hair is versatile, textured, beautiful, political, powerful, bold. It reflects our culture, who we are, and what we've been through.
Someone at school said my Afro puffs looked messy.
And when we believe those lies and start to feel insecure about how we look, that's when the trouble starts.
That's how it started with me. I wanted my hair straight so badly, but regular heat wouldn't get it straight enough. So I made that hot comb extra hot.
What I did to my hair was even worse. I gave myself a home relaxer, but I skipped an important step. And then, disaster.
So that's why you're afraid of relaxers. Wait, what step did you skip?
The neutralizer. It's a liquid that you put in your hair to make the chemical in the relaxer stop working.
That's it! I didn't make a neutralizer! That was my mistake!
Your real mistake was letting other people make you feel bad about yourself. Always be proud of who you are, little girl, no matter what the world tells you.
And remember, Lunella, if you want your hair to be good to you, you've got to be good to it.
Because to love your hair is to love yourself.
Slavery was 400 years ago, get over it. So if you're a person with any semblance of intelligence, I'm sure you've heard this talking point before. And I want to explain to you why it's not even necessary to start explaining the current system of racism in our country. One, because slavery was not 400 years ago. Slavery officially ended December 6, 1865. That's 158 years ago. My great-great-grandfather was a sharecropper. My great-grandma, who's still alive, grew up on a plantation. Also, slavery still exists, not just in some metaphorical form. By the 13th Amendment, if you are incarcerated, you are now legal property of the state. And 70% of all prison labor is forced. That is slave labor. By the actual diction in the 13th Amendment, you are a slave to the state if you are incarcerated. The modern day police force began as slave patrol in the 1700s, capturing runaway slaves. They rebranded into a police force when slavery was abolished. Want to know why? Because once you arrested a black person, they were once again a slave, legally, by legal definition. That is a legal definition that stands to this day. And you wonder why black people are disproportionately arrested for the same crimes compared to all other races, especially white people. So no, slavery wasn't 400 years ago, and we shouldn't just get over it. Slavery has not been abolished in this country, period. It still exists. It's reworked and rebranded so it doesn't look as bad, but it's still happening.
Here are some practices in ancient Africa that Europe considered barbaric and uncivilized for the longest time, when in reality they were just environmental conservation techniques. A lot of people often wonder, why is Europe more advanced when it comes to technology than Africa? And the answer is very simple. Africa did not need any technological solutions because Africa does not experience winter. For instance, Samori Toure's Mandinka Empire was advancing in horse transport, Ethiopia in lion transport, donkey transport among the Bantus. However, these forms of transportation were only beneficial to Africans and unsustainable in Europe during winter. Therefore, they brought in cars and vehicles, creating a huge hazard to the environment by leaving behind toxic carbon prints. Other uncivilized African practices that contributed hugely to environmental conservation were mud huts were made exclusively from nature and were highly effective in protecting Earth from environmental pollution by actively reducing the human carbon print. Many African communities used firewood as their main source of energy, where only the dry parts would be extracted for use. It was also a taboo in many ancient African communities to uproot or cut down medicinal trees because they believed that the spirits would relocate far from the local community, resulting into plagues. Among the Agikuyu community, for instance, it is still up to today a taboo to cut down a mugumo tree, which is believed to be a home for ancestral spirits and other creations. The waters in ancient Africa were holy and were perceived as habitats of God, therefore always kept pure, and purity to the locals meant no defecating, washing, or dumping of refuse into the waters because it was believed to be disrespectful to the gods. Ancient Africans took seriously the philosophy of Ubuntu, which meant living in close proximity with the flora and fauna, but due to the European management that started in the 18th century, which is considered more civilized, the exploitation of our environment has gone up at an alarming rate. But today, the Tonga people of modern-day Zambia are among the leading promoters of the Going Back to Eden slogan. like living on trees that was previously uncivilized but is currently a luxurious move in Europe. In conclusion, it is high time that governments, policymakers, and environmentalists gave the conservation mechanics employed by ancient Africa the prominence it deserves when it comes to environmental sustainability, if at all we are serious about saving the planet.
I was asked to explain this comment I made. Through a patriarchal lens, partnership affords too much control to women and places too much responsibility on men, therefore they don't see it as desirable. If I can back up for a minute and please stay with me here. During my adolescence, I heard constant messaging in pop culture that encouraged the independence of women and discouraged them living off of men. As a music lover, I point to songs like Gold Digger by Kanye West, which came out in 2005, songs like Independent by Webby, and Miss Independent and She Got Her Own by Ne-Yo, all of which came out in 2008. Jamie Foxx said in that song, "There's nothing more sexy than a girl that want but don't need me." But in the church, the message was consistent. Men are the head of the household, the spiritual leaders, the breadwinners, etc. Conflicting messaging, right? We're in a place culturally now where women are out educating their male counterparts for a number of reasons and establishing careers and lives without them. More and more women are opting out of oppression under patriarchy. And this causes issues for men who are still fully aligned with patriarchy. Women are finding themselves more at peace and less stressed single. And men are growing angrier and more bitter because they're happier when they're in relationships. So they make podcasts, preach sermons, make songs trying to show women how to be better at being women under patriarchy. Women do this too much and women should be doing more of that. It is because through a patriarchal lens, there's no relationship without control. But control becomes an issue when men are out-educated and sometimes out-earned by women. And now men find themselves at an impasse in search of a sweet spot that doesn't really exist. They seem to want women who bring things to the table, but not women that are too independent because it threatens his manhood if he can't control his woman. And this brings me to the point of my comment. Why not partnership? Why can't men value women as they value themselves, if not more? And champion, not discourage the accomplishments of the women they claim to love. Because ain't that what love is? Does love not liberate? It should. But through a patriarchal lens, partnership affords too much control to women and places too much responsibility on men, and I think this is why men shy away from it. In partnership, there's an acknowledgement that I'm not better than you. You are equally valuable to this relationship. Your dreams and goals matter just as much as mine. Your input matters as much as mine in this life that we're building together. And under patriarchy, that's far too much control for a woman to have, because you can't really be the head of the household in a partnership. Both parties are. Also, with partnership comes responsibility. It is letting go of the antiquated roles that we've been conditioned to believe that men and women should have respectively. It is creating and living into new roles based on the needs of that partnership. And of course, this looks different for different people, but it's work that men seem to have no interest in doing. Also, with partnership comes accountability. Because my wife is my partner, she has the power to hold me accountable. And in the upside down of head of household, patriarchal, alpha male machismo, this is everything but desirable. Just my thoughts. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below, and like and follow for more content.
Hey COVID conscious community, I came here to say I just had a really hopeful encounter, and I think I may have cracked the code. Bear with me. So I just went out to run an errand, and when I parked, there was a lady outside of my car who commented on my mask. Like, she was waiting outside my window and like making comments about my mask. I was freaking out thinking it was an anti-masker, but it turned out she was saying she really liked my flow mask. And so I'm like, wait, this has never happened before. Because, like, she wasn't wearing a mask. That's why I was thinking, oh, maybe anti-masker. So I step out the car to talk to her, and she's like, whoa, I love your mask. Where can I get one of those? I explained to her what the flow mask is, how it works, how it's reusable, yada, yada, yada. And she was saying, oh, I want to get one of those. And then I kind of gave my whole spiel about, like, where we're at with the pandemic, about, like, how it's better if you can, because I understand everybody's circumstances is different, to at least bump up from a surgical mask to an N95 mask, because the sides of a surgical mask allow airflow to get in, which can allow you to become exposed rather than having a good seal with the N95. And then the real shocker is when I offered an N95 mask, like I gave her my last 3M Aura, she was really excited about it. And like, y'all, this actually legit made me hopeful, because the government has failed us, and I think some people legitimately just don't know how much danger they're in. And like, she let me write her a whole list of resources, and she was excited about the mask because she said she had issues, which I'm assuming means she might be immunocompromised. And it's like, so many people were failed, and I thought that I'm sorry, y'all. I thought that like all hope was lost. But I legit think I cracked the code. I think a lot of us are now realizing this is what we have to do. We need to have resources readily available, whether it's like flyers or infographics or something, for situations like this. Because I think a lot of people, if they knew that there were resources and they knew how much risk they were at, in certain situations, they would mask. This person wasn't wearing a mask, but once they saw me and they talked to me, they got the resources they needed to protect themselves from whatever risk COVID poses to them. We cannot give up, y'all. We cannot give up. Don't stop masking and do not stop spreading resources about scientific facts about COVID. The pandemic is not over. We're going to win this. It's going to be okay.
Because a paper was able to prove that plants make noise, but that's not even the most interesting.
In the old times, our elders would say, the trees talk to each other. They'd stand in their own council and craft a plan. But scientists decided long ago that plants were deaf and mute, locked in isolation without communication. The possibility of conversation was summarily dismissed. Science pretends to be purely rational, completely neutral, a system of knowledge-making in which the observation is independent of the observer. And yet the conclusion was drawn that plants cannot communicate because they lack the mechanisms that animals use to speak. The potentials for plants were seen purely through the lens of animal capacity. Until quite recently, no one seriously explored the possibility that plants might speak to one another. But pollen has been carried reliably on the winds for eons, communicated by males to receptive females to make those very nuts. If the wind can be trusted with that fecund responsibility, why not with messages? There is now compelling evidence that our elders were right. The trees are talking to one another. They communicate via pheromones, hormone-like compounds that are wafted on the breeze, laden with meaning. Scientists have identified specific compounds that one tree will release when it is under the attack of insects, gypsy moths gorging on its leaves, or bark beetles under its skin. The tree sends out a distress call. Hey, you guys over there, I'm under attack here. You might want to raise the drawbridge and arm yourselves for what's coming your way. The downwood trees catch drift, sensing those few molecules of alarm, the whiff of danger. This gives them time to manufacture defensive chemicals. Forewarned is forearmed. The trees warn each other, and the invaders are repelled. The individual benefits, and so does the entire grove. Trees appear to be talking about mutual defense. Could they also communicate to synchronize masting? There is so much we cannot yet sense with our limited human capacity. Tree conversations are still far above our heads. But the entire point of that being, listen to indigenous people.
First you hated black people, then you hated Jews. Now you're hating everybody. So the question is, when it's the only people left are you, will you hate yourself? Power concedes nothing. This house is for the people, by the people, to serve the people, and you won't listen. You go after everybody's kids but your own. You make hate the way to go as long as it's not applied to you. You have to ask yourself the question, why would they be doing that? Who are we to cause that? None of us said we would come here and hurt people, and yet you make trades and policy so your bills can be heard. You go against the people of this state. This is a horrible, horrible session. This bill is horrible because it has nothing to do with the people. And the last thing I'll say is, God bless you, because somebody's going to have to atone. Yes, the gentleman from Fetro. Somebody's going to have to atone for not being who you're supposed to be.
Implicit bias workshops and trainings are not effective, but they are the most common types of workshops you will find in the DEI industry. Implicit bias essentially describes unintentional acts of harm that target someone's identity. I'm not a big fan of implicit bias work because it often ignores that, Racism and sexism and ableism and all the other isms exist because of social engineering, because of policies and laws that we have created that subjugate certain communities and privilege other communities. And though it is true that through messages and imagery, we learn, certain problematic ways of thinking, I don't believe that bias is implicit in the way that implicit bias training suggests that it is. Particularly for workplaces, when we basically say, hey, bias is just a byproduct of human interaction, we're really limiting the important step that many workplaces need to take to be accountable for the organizational inequity that they have created. For example, many workplaces will hire Black women into positions of power when they're already failing as a way to say, see, Black women shouldn't be in power because look how this woman failed in this position. Many organizations will try to get diversity into their pipeline, but then not hire in those employees. Why? Because that way the optics show that they're making efforts towards diversifying their staff, but the actual results do not change the actual demographics of their organization. And importantly, implicit bias work is not trauma informed. It actually over empathizes with those that are creating harm by kind of watering down their impact and not naming the depth of that harm. And actually it limits the ability for employees who are hurting to say, hey, this harmed me. Because now we have this language around implicit bias where we can say, well, they didn't mean to harm you. But that's not the point. That's not the conversation. The words implicit bias do not exist in any of my workshops or trainings because I just don't believe that it's impactful. And sociologically, I don't believe that it's accurate to say, again, that bias is implicit, that exclusion is implicit. These are things that we engineer. These are things that we create by having inequitable workplace policy, by creating feedback loops that are more scrutinizing of communities of color, by creating organizational hiring processes that don't allow Black and brown employees or women to actually make it successfully through the process. These are things that we are actively creating, and it takes active work to recreate these systems in a way that are more inclusive, in a way that is more equitable. Stop with the implicit bias trainings, because ultimately you're limiting the ability for BIPOC employees, for women, for LGBTQ people, for employees with disabilities to name what they're feeling in the work environment and to have that heard. And you're also decreasing psychological safety. When organizations feel they have language that makes them not culpable for the harm they're creating, you can create organizations that then feel empowered to enact more harm, but then to deny that they're actually doing it. Bias exists. It is not implicit. Exclusion exists. It is not implicit. Racism exists. It is not implicit. These are things that we actively perpetuate and can unlearn how to perpetuate. These are not things that are just happening below kind of our conscious level, but they are things that we learn over time, that we learn in our society. And though not everyone is being problematic maliciously, there are many people that are racist. There are many people that are homophobic, that are transphobic. And by naming this truth, we're actually creating more space for transformation. It doesn't do us any good to make people feel less bad about creating harm. What we need to do is name the harm that is happening, to name the systems of power and privilege that are present, because then we can transform. We must name first, then we must reimagine. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Ciara Jones. I'm an equity consultant, and follow me for more content like this.